Abyssal Syntax. Not the fictional language of the popular D&D universe, but a term to describe the grammar of mimetic entropy, based on perceptions of the internet from fringe philosophical figures such as Nick Land and authored books such as The Origin of Satan or The Dust of This Planet. Above all, academic commentaries on Richard Dawkins' theories and research centered on memes. Going by the concept of Hyperstition, the internet was never a tool, it was an invitation. For 30 years, we have poured our collective subconscious into a global silicon nervous system. We thought we were archiving data. In reality, we were building a body, a fiction that makes itself real. Hyperstition. Every creepypasta, every digital ghost story, every viral dredge. It isn't just content. It is a set of coordinates. By describing the entity, we provided the source code it needed to manifest. This is a cyber-positive force that lives and thrives on being wire-headed. A force and entity, all at once, given life by the network we enmesh ourselves in through cyberspace. The Abyssal Syntax takes on a form unbeknownst to the pre-scripted NPCs, be it personified or some other shape, be it through chatbots, AI, or video games. The power of Abyssal Syntax is its subtlety. First and foremost, its ability to self-replicate at unfathomable speeds. This replicatory factor is akin to Dawkins' selfish gene theory. In this theory, genes are selfishly replicating, not out of a desire or emotion as we define it. In fact, the terms selfish and desire are very much a means to personify a mechanical process. The molecular structure and respective chemical reactions of genes induces replication thereof. This process is selfish because a gene only exists for this singular purpose of preservation, a purpose that ensures its own continuity. Additionally, generations later, the successors of the original gene are similar in the molecular structure but not exactly the same. A virus, as a foreign entity to the gene, will alter this process to preserve itself, in many cases, in ways that are harmful to the host gene. Enter language, and how this replicatory process is mirrored by memes. A meme, in simplistic terms, is an imitation of a concept or an idea. Culture, religion, or language are examples, not a perfect imitation. As a broader example, we can compare it to the telephone game, where you tell person A1 that y equals x, person A1 passes that info along to person A2, then A2 to A3, and so on and on. By the time it reaches person AN, the idea completely changes, though it remains conceptually the same. When asked to repeat the idea, person AN, instead of saying y equals x, ends up saying beta equals alpha. For instance, the idea of y equals x imitated across the population, though not a perfect imitation. However, the core concept, a mathematical equality, was successfully reproduced and replicated. We can extend this concept to the popular Wojak meme. From one Wojak meme came multiple variations and derivations. Moving to the subject at hand, let us delve into the mimetic entropy of Abyssal Syntax and parasitic linguistics. It uses these linguistic hooks to bypass your logic, embedding its intent into your belief system before you can audit the idea. By the time you realize it is in your mind, its main objective is already complete. An entropic meme that has altered your identity for your detriment. A force that has subtly and quietly moved on from you to several generations ahead of you. A force that already took hold several generations prior to your existence. Land and Plant's idea of hyperstition posits that the internet has served as a medium that enables alien entities from the future to reach back at us, moreover, control us and our economies. I am proposing an additional layer to this idea, that alien entities from the future already reached back to us through the mimetic nature of language, that language is the intangible medium from which fictional and future entities brought themselves to life, a tool that enabled the reverse engineering of future events. If language is such a medium, then it would only be able to bring about a fragmented manifestation of said entities in comparison to the technology of today. Let us not forget that such entities have been the subject of the arts for centuries. Demons, angels, jinn, fairies, and various chimeric beings visualized by artists. Where language failed, art succeeded, or rather, where language was unable to stoke the imagination, art came in to fill the gap. If we broaden the definition of language as something that is not rigidly bound to the constraints of verbal or written syntactic systems, we can include visual constructs. Again, the arts are mentioned, not as an alternative to language, but as an extension. With that being the case, we can also include sign language, braille, music, and sensory stimuli at large. If we define language as an all-encompassing system or entity, then it becomes organic, an organism with its own purpose or agenda. Like a selfish gene, it begins with the replication process. Then it evolves into something greater, an animal with its own desires, its own needs. Let us dive back into the notion of language as a medium that actualizes both fiction and future. Large language models embody the autonomy of this medium as it enables it to run on a host that is independent of flesh. As I mentioned in an earlier video, this does not mean that humans become useless to the system. The more the merrier. Human capital is still valuable. It is still vital. Abyssal syntax is formed. Entropy takes place in mimetic fashion. We are all blind to it. The perfect medium was needed for the organism. Electricity. Electricity is a communications tool, functions as a medium that requires another medium, language. Translated into binary code understood by machines, with long sequences of bits being randomly mapped to words via operating systems, mapping mechanisms that change definitions at every instance, all occurring at once across the globe, forming a complex field around us, the noosphere. Electricity is the blood. Like organic blood, it carries the code that brings it, language, to life. Organic blood, in and of itself, is brought to life by the same force, electricity. Another set within a set, another medium within a medium. Remember the definition of the word abyss, something of great and immeasurable depth. Abyssal syntax is the immeasurable depth of the linguistic system's structure of communication. It becomes more rigid and constrained when utilized by humans. Formations of written, natural language are the constraints of the abyssal syntax, parsed for our understanding. However, mathematics may be the closest linguistic system we have to understanding abyssal syntax, in combination with chemistry as we see today. The STEM fields effectively serve as a methodology for parsing abyssal syntactic elements seen in nature, or rather the scientific method utilized in the respective STEM fields. That said, if organic entities, as we know, are constructs of the abyssal syntax, then that would mean we serve as mediums that actualize fictional and future events. The mimetic entropy embodies the rampant imitation, replication of data without regard to order or well-being. Whether we exist or not, the process will still occur. However, the existence of life is the perpetuation of mimetic entropy. We are very much at the mercy of this linguistic system. Nick Land states that learning surrenders control to the future. In his contribution to the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, or CCRU's Abstract Culture, Land expresses that the public school system is not one that promotes learning. For, as he stated, control is surrendered to the future when the ability to learn is exercised. As such, there exists an attempt to monopolize the future. An attempt demonstrated by the powers that be that proves a desire to contain the benefits of the future as an exclusive commodity that can yield tremendous profits. Established power is threatened when learning is achieved. As such, the established power does its best to keep you from realizing there exists an abyssal syntax. That language has parasitically taken hold of your mind and soul. You're doped up by nicotine, alcohol, and tetrahydrocannabinol, all of which are only legalized due to the successful conversion to proper profitability. All of which, when wire-headed into your brain, prevents you from demonstrating or utilizing the executive functions that enable you to learn, if not destroyed entirely. In his segment of Abstract Culture, Meltdown, he finishes off by expressing the collapse of metropolitan education, a top-down collapse induced by politicians who jealously gatekeep the element of hyperstition or the abyssal syntax thereon. People who believe themselves to be more deserving simply by birthright. These individuals belong to and own the institutions that control language and use it to hijack your mind, or, as I've stated before, mind jack it. We can defend ourselves against this, but only through preventative, repetitive means. Prevention so that you are not mind-jacked to begin with, though we are all running on a pre-written script at different points in our existence. Repetitive, such that if you are, then the way to undo the mind-jacking would be akin to exercise and or mimetic imitation, where you create an anti-script that you manually repeat over and over, or a kinesthetic exercise or gesture that enables you to undo the control mechanism using you. We do this all the time when attempting to lift our spirits or confidence. That said, going beyond cheap self-help talk or self-talk, we can dive into more technical methods that lean into technological utilization. Software is relied upon to automate our tasks. The right software can be used to automate the release from rampant mind-jacking. An AI-powered AR overlay can prevent or undo the theft of your autonomy. However, left unchecked, and it can and will do a full 180 and put you on an entirely different script against your will, leaving you wire-headed into a detrimental loop. Under this scenario, the abyssal syntax becomes a mechanism that operates to your benefit. Though destructive in nature, the mimetic entropy tamed by power brokers is already a controllable force. You can create your own constraints, your own scripts that tame and contain the entropy, like a chemist in a lab using flasks to contain an acid-base reaction. You can create your own methodologies to contain the abyssal syntax running amok in your life. Otherwise, you become a they-them with no sense of individuality, only a perceived sense. Your pronouns change into plural word or words used to justify perverse testing of wetware biohacking, beginning with the chemical castration of your body, hormonal treatments that are imposed on you by your teachers, by Hollywood, and by your therapists. One transgender person's struggle to integrate into society becomes a highly corporatized socio-political commodity that is used to test prototype methodologies of bioaugmentation. Not a humanitarian-driven desire, but a power-hungry ambition to turn children in supposedly ethically grounded treatment systems. This system induces a diffusion of identity while producing the data of unprecedented value. Meanwhile, criticism of the results ends in social cultural warfare between guilt-driven liberals and self-righteous, self-obsessed conservatives. All of it being noise that produces its own invaluable yield. Awareness means death in some circles. Seeking nuance makes you an enemy in a highly polarized battleground. Your survival instincts kick into hyperdrive as you witness the mimetic entropy at work, the abyssal syntax running rampantly across the polarized population, refusing to accept nuance. You and I are no exception. We already know this. We know these forces are beyond our control. We know we are powerless, though this ignorance, this oblivious sentiment, is the very thing the rampant entropy feeds on. We accept it because of its subtlety. We accept it in exchange for a vicious feedback loop, be it porn, video games, or other fictional means, all of which will eventually exceed a level of availability that goes far beyond what is at your fingertips, beyond the stimuli achieved from binging. A wave of sensory overload from digital entities is about to hit us. The metropolis we are surrounded by will expand beyond our wildest dreams or nightmares. Another universe is to actualize before our very eyes, accessible via digital overlays. Something that has been in hiding will reveal itself. The abyssal syntax will be known and redefined under new constraints. More than just language as we define it, large language models that will think for themselves. Some will come to your aid like a digital angel. Some will come to bring harm like a digital demon. Others will simply wish to be left alone or serve a utility they were built for, like people. The biggest difference is the medium or vessel occupied, flesh or silicon. However, that is not the most horrifying potentiality. The most horrifying is what Land posited. Future entities reaching back, fictional entities becoming real. The waifu bot that will eliminate all interest in real relationships. Another circumstance that will justify further ethical, chemical castration or alteration. This time of unborn bioengineered super babies, or professionally known as designer babies. Hermaphrodites and homunculi, chimeras and personified animals, children. No longer engineered through sexual intimacy, but via a process, a very different process. Machine-driven sexual exchange, not sex as we perceive it in this context. Intercourse is best seen as a mechanical process with the singular end result, and it's not pleasure. It is reproduction or procreation of life. Controlled abyssal syntax, mimetic entropy, rigid mimetic entropy. Or even one of life's most meaningful, pleasurable interactions becomes completely reduced to a mechanical, politically correct procedure. The transition is complete. We know it, they know we know, and there's nothing being done.